Imagine being a 7-year-old and losing both of your parents. Not only that, you are one of 7 children and then having to be raised by your eldest sister. It's quite remarkable how each journey travels through grief differently. And in my conversation with Janice Glyman, we just discussed that, what it was like to overcome grief. Janice, I want to say thank you for doing this, introducing you to everyone to Janice Glyman, who I have known for, I want to say almost 10 years now. Is it 10 years?
7. Mm-hmm.
7 years? All right, well, it's getting up there. So, and you've got quite an incredible story. And today I really want to focus on grief. And our dear friend Carol Miller put us together for this because she felt as though your story really could help a lot of people. So tell us a little bit about who you are, your story, why you're in this, why we're talking. Tell us a little bit about your story and who you are.
I am let's see. I'm one of 7. There's 7 kids in my family. And when I'm one of the youngest, I'm a twin.
Oh, right, okay.
Yeah, and when my twin and I, when we were 7, our parents were killed in a car accident.
Right.
And the 2 oldest, my brother was out of state, and my sister was in college, out of state, and just chaos. Everything just fell apart. And there were teenagers, high schoolers, 13-year-olds, and then 2 7-year-olds still at home. So it was a very scary, very crazy time. And so this was back in 73. So if you do the math, you can figure out how old I am.
Oh, I know.
And people didn't talk about it. Like it was, and especially to 7-year-olds, it was just lots of upset, lots of whispering in the kitchen. We had aunts and uncles in town, and they helped the family, but my oldest sister came back from college and she was engaged to be married. Well, they bumped up their wedding so that they could get married. They got married within 6 weeks of our parents' death, and they became our guardians.
Oh, how beautiful.
So, I know, they're really great. So, but they were 20 and 23 years old, and they're all of a sudden in charge of all of us. So it's crazy. It's just an unbelievable time. And they didn't know what to do. They were suffering their own loss, and a lot. We didn't grieve. None of us grieved for so long, so much pain, and we kind of just buried it. We buried it, and the adults didn't know how to help us. In fact, my grandmother wasn't interested in seeing us at first because it was too painful for her, because she had just lost her daughter.
Yeah, exactly.
So many different family dynamics, what happens when something like that.
So let's go back a little bit. You were 7 years old. You lost your mom and dad tragically, and you were then thrown into a family dynamic of chaos, absolute chaos. And I can resonate with this because of my own daughter's experience. She lost her mom at 14, and she's now 17, but I had to step in as legal guardian. And so at the time of you being 7, obviously not being able to process this, and certainly back in 1973, this was mediumship, and all of this stuff was brushed under the table. But how did you cope with it? What was when you were 7 years old, can you remember what you did to cope?
I don't know what I did. I really don't. They sent us back to school within a week. And so we were just supposed to be normal little girls. And I just remember watching the adults and my siblings just in pain. I was unsure what to do and what it meant for my life.
Yeah.
So I don't think I coped. I don't think I coped. I just continued on, kind of blind, with blinders on for a little bit.
Yeah.
A little bit. The daily stuff, is what kept us busy.
And do you think that that helped you at the time, going through just making sure you had a daily routine, keeping yourself in a process?
It That is a really good question, because I think of it in hindsight, and in hindsight, I say no. That is not what we needed. We needed to grieve, we needed to cry, we needed to question, we needed so many things. It probably was the best thing for my sisters, just to deal,
Yeah.
just to get by. They had to figure out how to manage the house, how to, like, my mom's car was taken back to my dad's company, so many crazy things. And they were just so, on a certain level, yes, just doing the daily stuff is what probably got them through.
Right. But on a much deeper level,
Yeah.
there was much more to it.
Yeah.
So, obviously at that time, looking back now, 47 years ago, what do you think you needed at the time as a child going through that?
I needed some more answers. They tried to protect us from everything. They tried to, we would hear little bits, but it just didn't put it together for us. So I was constantly questioning this. Even the night that they died, I was constantly questioning that. When I went to college, I was looking up, you used to be able to look on, they weren't even computers back then. You could look at old newspapers, and I was trying to find the newspaper back then so that I could find out what really happened. And so even little bits of information for my age level, I think would have helped me through the years. And some sort of counseling or understanding that grief has a pattern. Here's the steps you're going to go through. Or even if my siblings, the older ones, had understood that, then they could have helped us walk through it as we were growing up, I think.
Mm-hmm.
But it's been fascinating to me to see there were 7 of us and how each one of us has dealt with it so differently, the different stages in our life, that it's caused trouble because we didn't grieve. We didn't know how to handle the trauma.
And you just wiped it away.
Yeah.
As if those people never existed.
Yeah. And it was always, we got stories, we got fun stories, that I don't really have memories. Like something happened and I don't have memories from before I was 7, but there's so many pictures, and my sisters have really great memories. Those are what I cherish. But so they did, I guess maybe a little bit later, probably a couple of years after, and my oldest sister, who was taking care of us, she felt so strongly to keep everything the way my mom did it.
Oh.
So I know. So the traditions, even we were in the same house probably for 3 years. Everything was, mom did it this way, mom, and this is mom's favorite appetizer for Christmas, that kind of stuff. And that was beautiful for all of us, but I know it probably caused issues for her to not be able to express her own self as a 20-year-old.
Yeah, because at that time, as a 20-year-old, and I can only go on my own experience, which is very different, but somewhat similar, as someone who has to step into that role, who is replacing in a way that the loss of the parent, there is that, but can't I do it my way? There always has to be that memory. But she'd lost her mom.
Right.
And so in a way, there's that balance of, hey, I want to create my own traditions. I've now got my ready-made family, and yet I still want to honor mom. and I still miss mom, and I'm still grieving mom.
Yeah.
So it's huge. Do you think there was ever any form of resentment in the family?
Yeah, yes, for sure. Um, she was 20, and the next one was 18. Well, not quite 18, and really close in age. There were like 4 girls that were super close in age, and all of a sudden they have to listen to her like she's the mom, and not so they're having to listen to her, but then so upset they wish it was their own mom,
Right.
So and she lost her childhood, or her youth, I guess. She didn't go back to college until much later. She finished her degree.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah. So she definitely had resentment but what else would you like? Probably in the choice, because what other choice can you make except to step forward and take care of your family?
Yeah, absolutely. So what's your relationship like now with all your siblings?
Oh, it's great. It's fantastic. There's a little bit of kind of codependent situations going on, and so we have a tendency to brush a little bit under the rug. We still walk on eggshells with each other sometimes, but we call it the 7 of us. There's just this amazing bond between us because we've been through something that most siblings don't have to go through.
And they don't. Hopefully, a lot of people don't. But obviously you were 7 years old. So when was it in your life? What was your schooling like? Let's take you through your teenage years. How was that? Was that just very normal? You had your obviously new normal, but how was that watching all of your school friends with their mums, with their parents? How was that for you?
I always felt different. So I was a twin, right? So not only were we the twins, but we were the twins who lost their parents. Like there was always a label. And then even when we moved up to a small town in northern Wisconsin, and it was big news. New people are coming to town.
Yeah.
And instantly you're labeled, So, and people don't know how to handle it. Teachers didn't know what to say for Parents' Day, that kind of stuff.
Right.
So there was always a level of being different.
Yeah.
Even like my wedding night, or my wedding the night before, I just remember just crying because my dad wasn't going to walk me down the aisle,
Yeah.
and felt such an absence, such a loss, and of course back then we're told this shouldn't have happened, this shouldn't have happened. And so when you're told that something happens to you that shouldn't have happened, it makes you feel incomplete or like less than, I remember thinking, well, what's wrong with me that my parents got taken away?
And so in hindsight, again, with that clear vision of 2020 and hindsight, what do you think would have been best where people say, oh, it shouldn't have happened? You've got your own spiritual journey. You work with these amazing spiritual teachers. You've learned a lot during the time, but what do you think should have been given to you?
It's a really hard phrase, but I say it to people as gently as I can. And I remind them that, yes, this happened because it was supposed to happen, and it did happen. And had we just been, and I wish the whole paradigm of death would change, because we act like it's never going to happen. We act like people are never going to die, and then when they do, it shouldn't have died, and then they die too young. When I now believe they die exactly when they're supposed to die, right?
And what brought you to that moment?
Oh gosh, so much on my journey. I really didn't do any grieving work until I was 30. And I did a class when I was 34, and I cried for 4 hours finally. And then after that, I started learning a lot more about spirituality and learning the connection. And I don't know, but realizing that everything happens exactly the way it's supposed to happen. Like, because what else is there? Like it is what it is. It can be such a frustrating expression, but it is. It's exactly what happened. And people are going to die, and they die exactly when they're supposed to. Even a baby, there's just, and when I understand that, it takes it off of me, like, what did I do wrong? Like, why was God punishing me? Yeah. That story that they're taken away or they're sick because something was bad or wrong, like that sort of fear-based belief was terrifying. It was terrifying to live in and think that, oh, I didn't deserve parents, like, or they didn't deserve to continue living here. That was just horrible. And so I don't know how you tell a 7-year-old, well, that was supposed to happen, right? But at least don't give them the idea that, oh, that shouldn't have happened. Because then they're like, well, it just brings in such, what's the word? Like, it's vague to it. Yeah. I'm sorry this happened, and here's how we can move forward. Here's what we need to do to heal. And that's what I wish. I wish we all knew how to help each other heal rather than wishing it didn't happen.
We all have our own different stories, and that's a really good point that you said, when people say it shouldn't happen, because life does happen. Life sadly does happen, and joyously happens.
Yeah.
And with that phrase that you said, they died exactly when they should have done. This happened exactly how it was supposed to happen. What is your advice for someone who has just lost a child, just lost their only child, just lost their spouse that they have slept next to for the last 60 years? What piece of advice can you give them?
Well, that they're always with you. They are always, always, always with you. And you and other mediums that I've worked with that has just opened my heart. Like, I have goosebumps. Once I got reconnected to all my family on the other side, I felt whole again. So I was going through a troubling time, and I kept smelling smoke at night. And both my parents were smokers, but this didn't occur to me, right? So that went on for about 6 months, and I moved to a different house, and then I kept smelling smoke again. And I heard a medium say that that's a sign from your loved ones. They are there with you, and especially if they were smokers. And it just hit me, and I thought, that is Mom and Dad. So that night I probably said it out loud because I was just in bed, and I said, okay, I know you're with me. Can you stop the smoke? And I never smelled it again after that.
Wow.
I know. And it gives me bumps everywhere. It was like, this is real. This really is true. Like, we are connected. We are connected. And then around the same time, there was a medium who said coins are easy for them to send you. Coins are a great way to get a sign. And finances were hard, so I said, I don't need pennies, send me something bigger. Come on, Dad. And I started getting dimes everywhere. And to this day, I just get dimes all the time in the randomest places they shouldn't be.
Wow.
So
that's so beautiful. And it just gives people hope that they are still continuing to be there. You're in a very unique situation where I always say to people that the greatest love that we have, we were conceived, not always conceived through love, but we come into this world, all we know how to do is love.
Yeah.
And so all you knew how to do was love. You had what sounds to me like loving parents and then to have them ripped away from you in such a tragic incident. That love is never really replaced, but that void never is replaced.
Right.
Did you feel as though you were able to move through that and find that love and find comfort in the togetherness of the family?
Yes, we really did bond. Now, it didn't seem like the same kind. It wasn't the same kind of love, that I think you would get. And I remember growing up, and my sister started having babies right away. So then when all my siblings left, I had all these nieces and nephews, which they're closer in age than my siblings, and they're just dear to me. So I have a huge, beautiful family, and we just, we love each other and we laugh a lot. And I started seeing how my sister would treat them versus us. And I started to understand, probably negatively at first, that lack of unconditional love. Because when the kids could do no wrong, I was still doing stuff like a sister in her mind, and you get annoyed with your sisters, but your kids, you understand that they're learning and growing. So yeah, it chokes me up a little bit, that I grew up not quite understanding that unconditional love, that feeling. And I know what they did for us is unbelievable. I appreciate everything, and the relationship I have with my sister who raised us is amazing. But also, I didn't have everything I needed.
Yeah.
So,
and
all the girls at different ages didn't.
Yeah.
13-year-old was starting to go through high school, and she had to figure everything out on her own, basically.
And it is that unconditional love that certainly I recognize it with my own child, and I call her my own child, even though I didn't give birth to her, but I recognize it the same, where that unconditional love. And I actually remember saying to her one day, so what is it that I can give you that your mum used to give you?
Oh.
And she said, I just miss her kisses.
Oh.
And I remember saying that, and I'm thinking, is it weird? Because I came into her, I'd met her twice, and she'd stayed for a week, and then she'd stayed, and then I went somewhere for a weekend. And so after maybe 10 days of knowing this girl, she was then pulled from a different state to live with this crazy English woman that was constantly on the road with another kid. And I definitely understand what you're talking about, because I had to consciously make sure that I gave to her as much as I gave to my son. And I had to consciously make an effort. So I do understand what you're talking about, because there were times where Charlie was conditioned. When I would walk in the house, he'd get up and give a hug. And she was not conditioned to that. If someone walked into the house, she barely looked up from the TV. And I'm like, hello. And so I would have to make the effort and go and kiss her on the head. And now I understand that unconditional love. I understand, because that's what, as a mother, we give, as a child we expect, and that's what we miss.
Right.
Yeah. Even my age, I still call my mum up and go, Mom.
Right.
And I feel for those like you in that situation who don't have those moments where you can go, Mom.
Yeah. Definitely times where I was like, why? Why isn't my mom here to help me? And then, you get into bad relationships, and it's like, well, my parents would never have allowed this.
Yeah, I know. They probably would have done, but they'd be like, now you need to watch this one.
Yeah, you had to listen to them more than you have to listen to your sister.
Yeah, definitely.
So
Definitely.
there's all of those levels. There's all of those levels.
So do you think that your family members have got the same clarity as you have?
No,
Why?
and it's like, it breaks my heart. Um, they all have different, so I'm the black sheep of the family.
Oh,
So they
heaven
all,
forbid.
I know, right? So the religion sector still really operates in fear.
Yes.
And so I was able to witness clearly. We had one of our sisters died, gosh, 10 years ago now.
All right.
So it was very fast. She was diagnosed with a brain tumor, and within 2 months she had passed. It was, I know. And so we all like went to visit her at separate times, and like we all got to visit and be with her before she passed. But the communication and the conversations between all the different siblings was fascinating to me, because I was sitting there knowing this isn't fun. Her kids, have to go through this, but this is exactly what's supposed to be happening right now. So let me stay in a present place and just be with her, be with the family, be with my siblings, and all the emotions that they hadn't dealt with my parents were coming up. The anger, the grief, the scare, the fear. And I just watched it. And so I could see at different stages where kind of they all were. And, when they should have been doing this, and you should be doing this, and take her to this doctor, and here's there's just so many different dynamics, if you can imagine, with 7 of us.
Yeah.
And it was really clear to see those that are still holding on out of fear, and this is a loss, this shouldn't happen, and why. And it's so fascinating to me that the super strong religious ones are the ones that live in the most fear.
Yes.
Which surprises me the most, because they're the ones that they're going with Jesus. They're going to be with Jesus when they get there, but they're the ones that are the most terrified. And they still sit in, this shouldn't happen, instead of, okay, we're all going to die someday. Every single one of us is going to go.
You can't get past it.
Yeah, well, and let's be with each other and just speak, So it's been really interesting. I've always wished that we could write a book and have each sibling have their own section, and they just won't. They won't share like I share.
We all have a story, and certainly grief, everyone flows, and I call it a dance, because it is a dance, because any moment that music can change, and all of a sudden it's a different emotion. And I always say that having a faith does help you, and having something to believe in, but that fear-based it grips you, it holds you. So this dance with grief, obviously it flows, it changes, and you are clearly talking about it and clearly open with it. What are some of the tips that you can say to somebody, if they are really searching, if let's say they've just recently lost someone and they just don't know where to go, they're in that depths of despair, what would your advice be to them?
I think first and foremost, you have to find them in your heart again, because they will always, always, always be in your heart, in your memories. And if you can just find a couple gentle memories that, that don't like rip your heart out, they can just help calm you, to know they're always in your heart, they're always going to be with you. I think that can ease some of that pain, I think if you can get to an understanding that we all come here knowing our path, we just forget it when we get here.
Yeah.
And that they're exactly where they're supposed to be. you know, we're only here for a brief minute, and then we're back in the universe. And that I know, gosh, so when they're right in the grips of it, that's the hardest thing. That's the hardest, you know. And because I have lots of friends now who are losing their parents as they're elderly, and part of me is like, well, you got to have them for so long, you need to just appreciate it, right? Gosh, college, that was whenever I had somebody that was mad at their parents, I'm like, listen to me. Don't you be mad at your parents. But it's still a loss. Like, you're still missing them. And you have to allow yourself to feel it. If you can find them in your heart, it might be a little easier to get through the loss of their daily presence. But you have to go through those emotions. You really do. And when people say, what can I do? Say, listen, let me share my stories about my mom, because that's what's important to me, you know. And we have to let people talk about either how they died or the fact that they died. Like, we all tiptoe around each other, and we like pretend like we shouldn't talk about it because it's too painful. We need to let them talk about their loved ones. We really do, because I feel like that's very healing.
Yeah, I actually agree with you, because you know, randomly mentioning your loved ones, and rather than sweeping them away and you know, thinking that they never existed, is actually probably harder. And it's, I think, embracing them for who they are and who they were, and the presence that they had in your life. And I'm sure what your story does is it gives people a lot of appreciation and gratitude for what they have truly right now in their life, because I think that is really important.
Yeah,
you know.
it teaches you to be really present and really connected with the people that are here.
Yeah. So I have a question here, and this is something that, you know, I'm sure may come up with people when they watch this, and they say, well, you were 7 years old and you don't have a memory, and you don't have, you know, you have certain memories, but I just lost somebody who is, you know, who I have loved for 40 years, and you don't understand.
Yeah.
And it's, your story is not relevant to me. But what I say is it, no one's story is ever going to be relevant, because grief is so different.
Yeah, it is. I think it's so unique. I think it's so unique. Well, there's 7 siblings, and we all did it differently. We all dealt with it differently.
Yeah.
And it's so unique. But if you can, so I didn't learn about the 7 stages of grief until I was like 30. So to be able to understand grief and then help each other, you know, now I love helping people who have lost someone, because, and I can't do it the same way every time. You can't, just like you said, it's so unique, and you just have to listen to them. And if you can give any little tiny bits of comfort, then it helps them get through to the next stage. And I think the hardest one is anger. They're afraid to be angry at their loved ones. I had one sister who was fought with our parents before they left for the party. And then my brother, who was the oldest, it was sort of like hippie times. He didn't really get along with his dad. So can you imagine? And then you lose them. How do you be angry at them? But you have to get through that stage of it.
Yeah. And it's a real thing. It's a very, very real thing. And I think that when you are going through it, and your whole family is testament to that you are just moving through and dancing through grief. I really want to say thank you for this. You know, I think it's very, what I'm witnessing here, Janice, is that you have done work on yourself. You have done the work, and you're still going to continue the work, because there's always going to be a moment that grief is going to hit you, whether it's of your sister, whether it's of your parents, whether it's of other people. Grief will always hit us. And what do you say to people who are going through grief right now, who are just in that moment of like despair?
That you have to take it day by day. And I don't know what to say besides finding them in you. I don't know what happens in the immediate, you know, like when my sister Susie died, we weren't in the same town, but so I always felt a little distant for, you know, 5 years, 10 years probably. But still, I would think of her, and then you just get that grip like, oh my gosh, she's not here with us. And you have to just feel it and just sob if you need to. And then you'll come back. You'll come back to the present moment. Okay, you know, and they might be short. The in-betweens might be short at first, right? So, and I just think what you do and what other psychic mediums do is such a gift. I could listen to, and I've listened to so many stories, and I just leave, you know, you're in those giant rooms and you give these messages and they help more than the person that's getting the reading, right? Everybody's like, oh. And it's healing every single time when they realize they're right there with me. They are still right there with me, sending me dimes, you know?
Sending you dimes.
Blowing smoke, even if I don't want it. But that's the thing, is I had to get something that I didn't like so that I finally listen, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. Janice, thanks for sharing your story. It's
you're welcome.
really powerful.